Okay. All right. Let's get our culture piece out. Any volunteers to read it today?
I can read it.
Okay, let me share my screen. Perfect. When you can see it.
Yes. Trustworthy. We are worthy of trust. We are competent and reliable. We do what we say we'll do. We make and keep our commitments.
Yes. And how do you guys feel about being able to be competent and reliable and do what you say you're going to do and make your and keep your commitments? Do you guys do that? Is that part of our strong culture?
Yes.
Good. I think so too. It's and it's one of those things. If you look at the deal, we are worthy of trust. We're not just trustworthy, but we are worthy of trust. We develop ourselves in that frame of mind. So very good. Thank you, Ashley, for doing that. Appreciate it. Welcome everybody. We're going to go into our program with transformational habits. And if we can, before I turn it over to Ted, I'm going to just tell you a quick story. Some of you have heard this before, but it's a good reference point when it comes to transformational. I shared this presentation before, and it's always an interesting thing. I've got two logos. Imagine the Walmart logo and imagine the Nordstrom's logo. Okay. Which of those two would be transactional and which of those two would be transformational? Which company's transactional, which company's transformational? If you have dealt with either one of them, any ideas about that? Have you been in Walmart before? Anybody?
Not happily. Walmart is definitely transactional. You don't expect much when you go there.
I went just recently and they've added more self-checkout. So not only do they want you to hurry up and, buy your stuff, but now you do have to check out, your own products, and they don't give us any training. So I'm not sure, but you do have to check. I've been back to tell me if you guys have ever experienced this. I've been back to the electronic part of the store, and if they see me coming, they will go down a different aisle and actually try and escape instead of talking to me. That's how transactional Walmart is. Now, there's a place for transaction, and we got to have transaction. But how many of you have ever experienced Nordstrom's in your life? Anybody? Nordstrom's was the epitome for, customer service. I have a son who's 44 years old. That dates me a little bit, but he had a pair of shoes. They were Doc Martens. You guys, any of you familiar with Doc Marten shoes? They're a really good brand. And his one shoe split on the bottom. And he took it to Nordstrom's, and they said they would replace his pair of shoes at no cost. Okay. So that's pretty good, right? They replace it at no cost. And he told them, I didn't buy my shoes here though. And they said, not a problem with us. We'll replace your shoes at no cost. We don't need a receipt. We don't need any of that. We just, we'll take it and get you a new pair. Was that transactional or transformational? Transformational. Do you think my son ever went back there and shopped? Yeah, he's a loyal customer. He doesn't mind spending more money for the better quality and the better service. So as we talk about, transformation, that's kind of a difference. There is a place for both. Okay. There are times when we need transactional, but we want to try and give our clients and our internal staff and our external staff transformational experiences. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And so I'm going to turn the time over to Ted to take us through all of that. So it's all yours, Ted.
Okay, sorry. It must be in Spanish mode. It's converting everything. Sorry, I had a quick tax thing I had to get out. All right, well, happy Friday, everybody. Were you guys able to get into that video? I know it's a little clunky. I wish it could have been a little cleaner to get you signed in, but was everybody able to find it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thoughts? Anybody find that interesting? Or, I mean, really, let me set the stage. What we're talking about today is transformational habits, where we've adopted the language that Griffin Hill has. But in essence, is what are a system or a set of daily processes that you can do to prime yourself and set yourself up for success daily? And I think the key is to say, to have a system for your system, to have a system that says, no matter what I'm doing, no matter what my job is, no matter what, if I become a retired person or a stay-at-home mom, or I become this, that, or stay-at-home dad, or whatever, or in my job, that I can have a process to really be my best self every day. It would include priming, which would include sort of a little process to have. And so that's what we're going to discuss. And that's why the two topics we had. So back to the video. Any thoughts anybody had on the video of Scott Baird?
I thought it was interesting that the 30%, I think it was, that did the willpower of the marshmallows actually ended up being better athletes, better with academics, all of those things. I thought that was pretty interesting, and that the more that they did these kind of studies with the willpower and the persistence to have willpower, they were better at everything that they were doing, which I thought was pretty cool. I didn't even think of that. So
yeah,
like
including beating the ones with the high IQ. That to me was very interesting. They even beat those guys.
Yeah.
But then willpower can be weakened or strengthened also.
Yeah. Willpower is a skill that people can work on, which is awesome.
Yeah, there's a term out there, and I think there's a couple things, but I'll just say one of them: neuroplasticity, which is there's a bunch of books I've read that show that memory can improve, intelligence can improve, willpower can improve. I mean, you take anything that you think is an inherent trait, like, oh, well, they're just smart. Oh, they're just gifted at music. Oh, they're just an artist. They're just talented. They're just creative. They're fill in the blank, whatever that is, it can improve. And we actually start with very, very, very small differences in us. Sometimes there are, you have kids, you learn that people are different right out of the gate, but those differences are quite small. And if we want to, what happens is they're just a little bit ahead, and then they just keep pouring attention to it, and it changes over time. But if you want to be whatever the fill in the blank is, you really can. There's nothing that you're like, I just can't do that. I can't remember things. I can't whatever that is, you can do that stuff. And I think they've proven it over and over again. It takes some work and some persistence, but again, that's something like what we're going to talk about today would help you just kind of be the intentional person that you want to be. So any other thoughts on the video before we talk about the little reading? So willpower makes a big difference, even over intelligence and other stuff. And you can strengthen or weaken your will. And there's a thing there. If you're really interested in that, there's a whole nother thing. You can use that login to go in anytime you want. If you feel like it, there's lots and lots and lots of videos like that. I will direct you to some over time, but you're also welcome to anytime go into that system. If you fascinated with willpower, there's another one you could go in and search called how to strengthen a weakened will. And there'll be a whole nother thing on what you can do to strengthen your willpower. But the point of that gets to, are there a set of things that we could do every day that would strengthen our will and would stack the odds of success in us? He calls them transformational habits, and that's what we're talking about. Another form of this whole thing would be priming, which is a Tony Robbins concept, and they've proven that also. They primed the people in the willpower study with the radishes versus the chocolate, and then that they were primed to be patient or not. They were in the puzzle and to have mental prowess, and we're primed all the time through life. And I didn't pull in a bunch of examples, but we get those a lot where it's like you're primed. It's amazing how powerful priming is, not just in your day, like how to do your day, but before you were to do a meeting, or before you were to do a different exercise. If you were to do a gratitude exercise, it would change the results you get. If you were to do something funny and read some jokes and laughter or whatever, but there's lots of priming. And so also, as well as how to prime your day, which I thought that Tony Robbins thing I sent was interesting for that. So that's why I did that one. So let's switch to that. The other piece of that I really thought was powerful was the thing I put in yellow, which was, start with your state, then make sure you manage your story, and then you can work on your strategy for the day or for life. So any comments on the and this is from, all of a sudden I blanked, Tim Ferriss. He wrote The 4-Hour Work Week and The 4-Hour Body, and he has a podcast that's really, really good. And then he took the best of his podcasts and wrote this book called The Tools of the Titans, which has like probably 100 chapters, and each one's the best things that he got from each podcast of his best podcasts. And this is one from Tony Robbins, so that's the source of this. But any comments on this?
Ted, I think one thing I like about this, if you think in the sports world, before teams go out and play, they have their rituals, they have their things that help motivate them before they get on the field, that gets them excited, so they're priming. As a speaker in my past, whenever we do presentations or we go speak, we are priming before we get out on that stage, so that we have as much power behind us, excitement behind us, so that an audience will feel that. And so I think there's a lot of that goes on, especially in the sports world, when I think of I think of like the rugby when they do the hukka, and that's, to me, that's kind of priming. You're really setting the stage. So
Yeah. That's I read a book called High Performance Habits by Brendan Burchard, and he gets a lot of the stuff from Tony Robbins as well. And he calls it setting your intentions before, or you go into your next thing throughout the day. So like I like the idea of priming, first thing in the morning to set the stage for your day, but you can also do it throughout the day for different parts of your life, whether you're transitioning to go home or you're transitioning to go to work or whatnot. Is just prime yourself to face what you're going to face and be prepared for that, and having a good positive mental attitude with it. So
Just looking to see if anybody else had any comments. All right. One other thing I think to highlight in here is the breathing. If probably 25 years ago or something, I went through a Tony Robbins course, and he did a thing on breathing, which I don't think I'd ever thought of that or heard that. And I just really, whatever reason, I adopted it, and I think it has absolutely changed my life to just you know, like where I'm like, I don't have anxiety. I don't have, I mean, I do get stressed or have, but what happens is I've learned to breathe it out basically and to manage that. And it sort of, my wife and I sort of figured that out a few years ago, like, oh, wow, you've just been doing this whole time. I actually read a book about 5 years ago called Breath or Breathe by Nestor. And you're like, how do you have to have a whole book on how to breathe? But it's pretty fascinating, the power of breath and what goes on with that. So they give a couple examples here. I mean, I think you can you can look stuff up in Google. You can look at the Wim Hof breathing. There's fire breathing. There's square breathing where you would do, 4 seconds. And that's basically the one Tony Robbins, his was like breathe in for 10 seconds, hold it for 10 seconds, breathe out for 10 seconds, and then stay. That's a little hard at the 10 seconds, but you can do that. It's called a 4 square breath, which would be you breathe in for 4 or 5 seconds. 4 is a little short for me, but 5 seconds in, then hold it for 5 seconds, and then breathe it out for 5 seconds. And then, and it matters to breathe through your nose too. So that was kind of interesting, I thought, in there. And I thought it was kind of interesting to see what he does every day to just sort of prime his day. And if you, in the book, you hear that Tim Ferriss does a lot of those things, and a lot of his guests do, the people that these chapters do the same kind of thing. All right, anything else on the reading before we move into the stuff today? Okay. Well, if you haven't read it, I definitely think it's worth the read. So I would strongly encourage you to do that. And again, my favorite thing of all of it was how the Tim Ferriss, based on going to the Tony Robbins thing, wrote state, story, strategy. And I think that's a great thing, that get your state right and then get your story right. And then you can go tackle whatever. All right, I'm going to share my screen and we will go through these. Let's see. Takes a minute when I have so many screens. Everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about priming, and this is not the end all prescription of what to do. It's just to give you some thoughts and ideas of what you might consider doing. And what my outcome for this would be that you would build a process for yourself that says, how do I set myself up for success? How do I stack the odds in my favor? And we've got the stuff that you saw from the Griffin Hill video that talked about the impact of it and not really what to do daily. But at the end, I mean, the whole video is leading up to saying why we should have transformational habits. We've seen Tony Robbins' little example, and then here would be my process or the things I would do. But it's not, you do what works for you. The key is, I think, to do something. I thought I had some, sorry, anyway, okay. I just, all of a sudden I thought I had goal review in there twice, but I don't see it. So if I can't see it, we do come across it, then I apologize. So one thing I think is really powerful every day is to review your goals. Now we'll talk about it a little deeper process down at the bottom on that, but if you're talking any religion, any business, even a sports team, anyone that wants to talk about progression, the formula for progression is really simple. It's 3 things. Where are we? Or you could say, who am I? Where am I going? Where am I trying to get to? And what's the plan? What's the path to get there? So I'll use religion, for example, if you believe in God or believe in that, it's like, okay, who are you? Is there really a God, and are you a child of them? Are you a creation? Are you biological? Whatever, but who are you? What's your potential? Okay, you can go back to God and heaven if you want, and then what's the plan to get there? Okay, well, here's the path of life to do that. Same with business. That's everything we do with planning is our status quo. Where are we at as a business? What's going on in the environment? What are our competitors? What do our customers want? this who we are, and then what do we believe? That's why it's so important to have core values and mission and purpose. And then you say, okay, what's our ultimate vision? When we're done with this thing, when we've hit the next, maybe not ultimately done, it's good to say, what's our man on the moon thing when we're really want to be out there? What does it look like? But what's the next hill we want to take? What does that look like? What does success look like? And then, okay, so what plan do we think will get us there? What are 3 or 4 strategies that we think will do the biggest thing to move us towards our goals? And then you build a whole bunch of plans and accountability and systems under that, and then you move towards that. So I think anything in life really deals with those 3 things that you've got to have as far as progression and trying to move something. Even if it's like, I want to go to New York, it's not even a whole business plan or a life plan with, let's say, religion or whatever, successful life, religion or not religion. It's even simple like, I want to go to New York. Okay, where do I want to go? I want to go to New York. Where am I at? I'm in Salt Lake. What are my options to get there? Okay, I can walk, I can ride a bike, I can take a train, I can take a bus, I can take a car, I can fly. Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to fly. Okay, I could fly east, I could fly west, I could fly north, I could fly south. You can go through Dallas. There's lots of different options, and you pick your strategies, but you've got to know where you are, where you want to go, and then what's your plan to get there. So, and that's what the goal review thing has. Any comments, or you guys can just interrupt in or raise, but I may not see your raised hand because I don't really have a screen anymore.
Yeah,
So
Ted, I just wanted to say that was a good parallel to goal setting when it comes to, everything going on. When you want to go somewhere, I really love that parallel when it comes to goal setting. It's saying, consider it's a destination and the planning you'd go through in traveling there and how you would make your decisions. And if you can backtrack and put that same lens on your goals, that's a really good analogy and a good way to be thinking about goals.
And we will talk about goal setting more in future weeks and stuff. But the key for today is, and maybe a little bit later today, we'll talk a little bit more about that type of stuff. But the key with this stage is to review your goals. I think ideally you would review them daily, at least at a high level. And that would be part of, and I don't know that I have the order of this stuff right. It probably depends what what you think. I think I've added some things and I kind of messed up the order. I think the order does matter for me, and because it's about priming. And so if you prime the pump, if you think of that with where that term comes from, the old type of spigot pumps that they used to sit and crank to pump water up, you had to get a drop of water in there to get the thing to seal so that it would create a vacuum and pull the water up. And I mean, there's forms of priming. You can do it with some old machines that you want to start. You have to put something, a little gas or a little stuff in the carburetor to kind of, again, prime it and ignites it. And so priming isn't just a new concept or a thing they made up. It applies all kinds of lives, which is to just, it's almost like a yeast catalyst that it makes stuff happen. And so I think definitely reviewing your goals and to be clear about who you are, where you're going, what you plan to get there, and what are the specific milestones you want to hit this year, this quarter, this month, this week, and then it brings it back to today. That helps you kind of focus on the day. So, all right. Then at that point, I would say it's really valuable to use your, I believe in becoming a slave to your calendar. And I think that I just read something. I don't think it was in this thing we had here, but they talk about being a scaffolding for your life. And I Harry may remember. It was from the Tim Ferriss book, but he talked about this thing being a scaffolding. And I think it's just, and I think I was talking about their one and done, to say when you sort of make a decision once, but to me, this calendar blocking becomes a scaffolding of your life that creates actually flexibility, not rigidity. But basically, I just plan the work once and then I just work the plan, and I don't have to rethink about everything. So I try to schedule even my thinking time, or I don't do this as well as I used to at all with my calendar, but I really think it's valuable to get in and prioritize your day. What are the top 5 things I need to accomplish today? And they've also done a lot of studies where if you do the one thing, if you list 5 things and you only get the one thing and you do the top thing first, those people succeed a lot more and accomplish a lot more. So I think it's valuable every day. Otherwise, we just get busy into what's easy, or it's like, oh, I've got to do this thing, but I'll just go run this errand and I'll knock that, I'll knock number 17 priority off the list because it sounds good. And that's sort of the way we work. So prioritizing your top priorities for the day and blocking your calendar. And I do this kind of day and review my calendar, but you kind of should do it on a weekly basis to kind of set your week up as much as you can. Any comments on that, on calendaring, prioritization, calendar blocking?
Yeah, Ted, oh, sorry, go ahead. Who's?
It's Jessica. So just quickly, I consider my calendar a commitment to whatever project it is that's happening. So it's a really good way of, like you said, making sure I don't get lost in the weeds, but also showing respect and collaboration and whoever it is you've scheduled that time with. So sometimes by having that commitment there, it's going to push you to start working on those things that might be a little harder.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, and I call this DMO, daily method of operation, and I take a week at a time, but it goes for much longer. Taking certain things and inputting them into that daily method of operation, which could be studying or goal review, all those certain things that you're going to be doing all the time, and you put those in those slots. And then, if you're in sales, for example, you're going to block out, prime time selling things, and then, other pieces that kind of fit into that sales regiment. And if you do that, again, you don't have to think about a lot of this stuff because it's already, you've made the decision once and it's going to fit into these pieces. And then you have flexibility and some other stuff when things change with, scheduling and clients and so forth. But for me, it's called a daily method of operation, and it's very easy to look at, and you know exactly what you're going to be doing for long term on a lot of these things because you've made that decision way ahead of time.
Awesome, thank you. Again, I've kind of said this before in snippets as we started this leadership thing. And again, leadership's gonna be very different than management training, which is like how to have a one-to-one, how to do a performance review, how to do this, how to identify your people's strengths. That is management. It's very tactical. Leadership is different. And some of this we will blend with how to have a successful life. You don't have to be a leader to do that. But and you're like, again, when are we going to start talking about leadership? And again, we will, but most of that will be like, what are leadership traits? What are leadership? Because we're going to skirt around the edges because the core is different. Every type of leader's different. A leader is someone who somebody wants to follow and is willing to submit and follow that person for whatever reason. We can get into those reasons and we'll look at power dynamics and stuff. But the point of this stuff is to say, it's like, let's say you're in a baking bread contest, and then this one person has these amazing looking creations, and lo and behold, nobody else was informed that there was this thing called yeast that was a catalyst that could explode things and make stuff work wonderfully well. And everybody else has got this weird flatbread, and they're trying to do that. And I believe that these things that we've been hitting on, how to think, how to learn, how to be creative and try to step outside the box and do that. And now these transformational habits, you're like, why does someone have $1 billion and someone else has $200 million and someone else is amazing on stage and someone else is a great caring person that can always be there, and there is luck, there's timing, there's situations, but there is some stuff, I think, that is these simple things that really make a different life, that make a different results. And so if you want different results, you got to do different things. And I don't think I think everybody puts it on the end. And you look at, like, if I were to look at a business, I've probably invested in 200 or 300 businesses over the years, whether it's a real estate development or a startup software company or whatever. And everybody thinks it's the plan. You talk to them like, well, you're not going to take my idea. It's like, I don't want your stupid idea. The ideas are dime a dozen. We don't need, even here at Smart, we don't need some $1 million idea. We just need to execute. You just need to have a process that it's always about the execution, and say, how do you successfully put together a life in this case, or how do you put together a day and then a week and then a month and then a quarter and then a year, and that becomes a life and a destiny. Or in the business case, how do you do a few simple things to show that you can execute? And it's great if it's better to be headed in the right direction with a winning idea, but a winning idea with a bad team or a bad play set will not work. And the right team with the right strategy or the right play set, you can then learn that you have, through your feedback mechanisms, you have the wrong plan, and you can adjust and pivot. So again, that's why we're doing these things that don't maybe look like leadership. It's to say, we're trying to say, if you put yeast in your bread, it rises. It's a catalyst. If you put gas in the tank of the car and spark plugs, it's amazing what happens. And oil, so that it lubricates. Those three things, you don't really have an engine. You can have all the parts and all the complexity and the most amazing, efficient engine ever known, and without a fuel, without a lubricant, and without a spark to ignite that, you've got nothing. And all this stuff we're trying to talk about is to say, we're trying to show you things that I believe and we believe are the fuel, the spark, and the lubricant. All right, I'm going to skip D and E. We'll probably talk about those later. Those are literally out of the, and they apply whether you follow Griffin Hill or not, but these are out of the Griffin Hill system because that's something we've adopted. So it's a priority alignment tool. We've talked about that before in the management training, and a high performance journaling. The science behind this journaling and the 3-to-1 is fascinating. There's and it came from a book, Craig Manning wrote it, Dr. Craig Manning. He is now he was the sports psychologist for the Olympics when we did so well in Sochi, the Winter Olympic team for the US. And now he's with the Milwaukee Bucks when they won their championships. But it's the science into what happens in that high performance journaling process in Griffin Hill is amazing. And it's basically saying, okay, let me evaluate yesterday, what happened yesterday. And what matters, I'll just skip to that, because what matters is that you set up the next day to say, okay, today, this is what I'm going to focus on. And I'm going to really try to do this one thing. And then you go and you execute, and then you come back and you evaluate, okay, what are 3 things that went well on what I did? And let me just use the example that they had from the ski team. What made all the difference is they would say, okay, on this run, they shoot the, I'm losing my language, but when they go through all the gates and they do the slalom, a slalom skier that had the ones that hit all those gates really, really fast, they would say, okay, I'm going to keep my elbow in. I'm going to keep my elbows in as I hit the gates, those poles that they ski between. And that's what they're going to focus on. And again, we would apply that to our day to say, what do I want to focus on today? But they would do that. Then they would go do their run. And then they would come back and they would say, how did I do on my intention of keeping my elbow in? What are 3 things that I did well? And they would cite them. And then what's one adjustment I want to make now? Okay, actually, I want to make another adjustment on my elbow. I brought it, or you'd say, no, I nailed that. Now I'm going to focus on hitting the turn sooner. Or so you set yourself a new goal for the next day, and then you go and you evaluate. And I won't get into the science of that, but very powerful. So that's what the high performance journal is here. And the priority alignment tool again, we've talked about. That goes up to this one, which is you're very clear with what are the roles in your position. But I would say use this in your life. What are the 6 or 7 or 8 areas of your life? You're a parent, you're maybe a spouse, you're a friend, you're a family member. You could maybe bundle those into one thing. I have my job role, or you could say it's income producer. You know, I have to make money. If you don't even want to think in terms of, well, I'm a recruiting director here, or you could just put it, I'm an economic engine. You've got your spirituality, you've got your mind and mind growth, you've got your play and your decompression time. You've got, I think I said spirituality, emotions, but you figure out the roles in your life and the areas of your life, and then you have responsibilities under each of those, and then you would have directions to do that. And the key with this, the priority alignment tool, is that you and your manager in a work setting would be very aligned with that. So that's these two, and we'll do those more in a minute. So journaling, again, it's amazing to me as I probably read, I mean, I look at and now I've kind of switched to Audible, but I look at my Audible, I've got like 1,700 books in there in my account, and I haven't read all of them, but I mean, I read a book or two a week at least, and some of them are fiction and don't have any of that, but a lot of them aren't. I'd say 70%, 80% aren't. And it's fascinating to look at how the same things that everybody does, when you look at people that I view as hit the same success measures I'm trying to get. And I don't want to put it that money is the measure, or fame, or accomplishment of some sort, or, you know, I think you could, well, I do. I think that being a stay-at-home mom, I mean, that creates humans. That's more important than building a business. And not that you have to be a stay-at-home mom to do that, or it just doesn't matter. That you create your own measure of success. It doesn't have to be that you made a bunch of money, or you built a big business, or you're famous. But when I look at people that I deem as successful, and I value their ideas in a book, it's amazing how many of these things show up over and over and over again. And a big one there is journaling. So couple different ideas you could do. One is, I think, to have a big ideas journal, and you could put all these in the same journal. You could have different journals. There's a book called Big Ideas, and that's one of their big ones, is just that you journal and just put every big idea, you just brainstorm sort of every day to do that. The most important of these is a gratitude journal, and that's why I hit it twice. It's here and then down here again. We'll talk about that. But to be gratitude, and I'm reading a book now by Oprah Winfrey and Arthur C. Brooks on how to be happy. And they went into, and I've heard it, Scott Baird in Griffin Hill has a thing on gratitude also, and they talk about the data behind gratitude, and it is amazing, the impact of that. So, but I didn't have all that to give you, but do a gratitude journal. One, you could just do your normal, what people think of as a journal, I call the travel log, like this is what happened today, and this is what I was worried about, and this is what made me mad, or, you know, you could process feelings or whatever. Or, and they get monkey brain, that came from Tim Ferriss, the guy that did the podcast with Tony Robbins that we read, where you just get all of your noise of your head down and on paper to kind of quiet your mind. Any thoughts on or comments? I'm doing too much talking, but nobody says much when I ask, so I'm not asking good questions. I always think that's you teach a lesson and you're doing all the talking and nobody says stuff. So shame on me that I think I have too much content to get through. So yeah, please comments on any of this.
Yeah, just gratitude. So it's impossible to, well, I think it's impossible to be negative if you're showing gratitude for what you have. So it really puts you in that abundance mindset, and like attracts like. It's going to bring more of the good stuff to you versus, focusing on what is lacking. So I think that piece of gratitude is something that's often overlooked, but can have immense impact on the way you're thinking and just the way that your life kind of unfolds.
I'm going to second that. Carrie, you were going to say something too. Go for it.
No, I was just going to say that's priming the pump.
It is.
And I think that's really, huge. And you guys too. I think sometimes we look at journaling and we go, okay, well, gosh, I got to go down and buy a journal. And I mean, I have all kinds of stuff, ideas, thoughts that are just in a spiral notebook. I have some really nice leather journals that sometimes I don't write in as much because they're so nice and beautiful. And I think, man, it has to be really important, but go buy a spiral notebook and start writing stuff down, because that's the important part, is getting those ideas, those thoughts, the gratitude thing. Makes a huge difference. Just do something. It doesn't have to be fancy.
If I can only add anything, it's from that that state of mind document you sent us, right? Feeling totally grateful for three things. When he goes on to that, it's like there's no space, just like what Jessica was saying, no space whatsoever for negative feelings. And man, can you imagine your day without negative feelings? I mean, there's always stuff that pops up, but how amazing is that? Anyway, back to you, Ted. And sorry if I jumped the line. It looks like there's a few comments.
Yeah, there's some hands up.
I can't see anybody to call.
So Kyle is first, and then Techie,
and then Tara, right?
Yep.
So the things that we think about are the things that we become ultimately, right? And what a better way to think about things than to write them. I've always just whenever I've done gratitude journaling, those are my best days. I probably should do it every day, but those are certainly the things that are born into my thoughts for that day. And it, whatever you write controls your thoughts, and your thoughts control your actions. And I just think there's so much power in journaling, and especially gratitude journaling.
Just a quick comment on that. I don't, without language, there really is nothing. Think about that. If you you don't have words, then you really can't have thought, and you can't, and that's, you look at, again, I'm not trying to promote religion or anything, but it's interesting. You look at, I'm familiar with the Judeo-Christian thing. So you go to the Old Testament, in the beginning was the word. I mean, it starts with literally language that says, there's language, and that begins to do that. And so, yeah, the idea of processing your thoughts, I just read one of the other podcasts in that same book I've referred to, The Tools of Titans. I was going to look it up, but where they had talked about, if you have to think, I mean, the way to think is to write. Now, someone's like, well, that doesn't work for me, but yeah, you can do it all in your head, but you have to give it to words to think. You just can't think in abstract and say thoughts. You're literally having words and language. That's why, like in the Old Testament, when they confounded the language at the Tower of Babylon, if you believe that happened, that obviously that would destroy society if you couldn't think and communicate with each other, and even communicate with yourself. And so thought is very powerful. And I think even if you're not a writer, but to try to write, and even you're doing it in your head, but that's noise. And so it is powerful to get, even if you don't like to do it. One of the success secrets of everything I've ever seen is they put it down on paper, because now you start to really think and process and organize your thoughts. And until you write, you really don't even realize what your thinking is until you go through the writing process, and then you're like, oh wow, that's what that was. So anyway, I just wanted to add on to Kyle. Sorry to interrupt. Who was next?
So Techie and then Tara after.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys sharing those things. That kind of brings to mind this idea that your language, your thoughts, they determine your destiny and your future. Yeah, if you don't have a mastery of how your thought space is, or mind space is, if it's cluttered, if it's negative, if it's not positive, then that becomes a mirror of your life. But if you change your thoughts, your language, if you figure out a way to to manage it, then, and it becomes more positive, optimistic, more confident, then that mirrors your future as well, or that will determine your future. And I like this idea of writing it down as well. I believe, I don't know where I read that. I think it was David Allen's GTD method of getting stuff done. He talks about how our minds are not meant to memorize everything. We don't have the capacity. And so if we keep everything in our minds all the time, we're just going to be anxious and have a bunch of anxiety, all the things that we need to do, all the scenarios of this unseen future that could happen, or if we don't do something. It leads you to fear-based thinking and anxiety-based thinking. And so we have to journal to get those thoughts out in order for us to process what they mean and then plan and strategize on how we can create a better future for ourselves. So,
yeah, just to add on that, like I for whatever reason was able to keep dates and stuff in my head. Like I could know exactly what I was going to do for the next 2 weeks. Yeah, at 7 o'clock on Thursday, I'm doing this. At 3 o'clock on Wednesday, I could have 12 things a day and remember all, plus all my to-do lists that weren't scheduled. And I just sort of could keep all that in my head. And so it's like, well, yeah, I don't need to do this. And I'll tell you, it was the most powerful thing, even though it was easy for me to remember everything that was going on, to dump it onto a piece of paper. And that is like an error-proof permanent storage device, whether it's paper, whether you put it into a task list, with your iPhone, or you put it into a calendar. And it was really a combination of those, but it was the most amazing, again, a life-changing thing. It sounds kind of dramatic, but it really was. Even though it was really easy for me, I was not a disorganized person. I was very clear, and I remembered everything. I could remember all that. And yet, to put that down and to get all that noise, and I freed up my mind. I didn't have to remember anything at that point. I just followed I just followed my commitments, and I followed my calendar. And then I would look and say, okay, what are the other things that aren't on my calendar? What's my parking lot of stuff? Okay, it's a game changer. And that's, again, from somebody that was something that was naturally really pretty easy to me. I didn't need to be organized. I didn't need to turn my life around, because I did remember all that, and I was already keeping my commandments or my commitments, and it was a huge game changer. So I love that, Techie. Who's next?
We have Tara and then Shantae.
Okay. I just wanted to kind of piggyback a bit off of what Jessica said. I'm a true believer in gratitude journaling. However, I find a lot of power in also letting individuals know when I'm thankful, and I have a heart of gratitude for them as well. I like to just what you were saying with the words and the language. I think it's very important as well that we give them something to journal, whether they're journaling or not, to let them know that we have a heart of gratitude and we appreciate them as well. So when I journal, I do it for myself, but I try to make it a point not to ever forget those that I'm thankful for. I want them to know that.
I just read a thing that is really good. Oh man, you guys are hitting on so many things. So sorry, I keep interrupting, but there was a sort of a pay it forward one, and I'm getting scrambled on the books I read, but I had read another one in the last couple months where they talked about the power of just doing that, and of just, yes, telling someone thank you, giving a smile, and they had a better way of putting it all, but it's just what Tara's saying, not just to be inward focused, but to then do that outward and express to people, and do kind things for others, do random acts of kindness, express your gratitude to other people. It is so powerful. So that's a really powerful 1-2 punch, to be grateful in yourself, and to have all that, and to then express it and share it forward with others. So thank you. Shantae?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, kind of along the same lines as Tara, that I think gratitude can become a habit just like anything else. So Carrie knows I'm big into gratitude journaling, and the first gratitude journal that I had actually was prompted because I had a hard time getting into the gratitude mindset, and I would sit down and start trying to write and think, like, I don't know what to be grateful for. I felt like I was saying maybe the same things every day. So that really helps too if someone's not into journaling. or not into practicing gratitude, to maybe get a prompted journal. They have those, and that helps kind of get your juices flowing and your brain thinking about those things. And I had one that was day and night. So it was interesting to see the things that I was grateful for in the morning, and then the things that I expressed gratitude for in the evening before I went to bed that had happened throughout the day. And I think it was a good way of trying to find greatness in the day that I normally would overlook. So I just wanted to say that. And then also I wanted to ask you, Ted, you mentioned a book and I was trying to find it, and I just wanted to see if it was Build the Life You Want. Is that the one that you mentioned that you're reading by Oprah?
No, it's Happier. Let's see, it's by Arthur C. Brooks and Oprah Winfrey. I love this author from his stories of this, but it's called Build the Life You Want.
Okay.
And it's kind of how to be happier. There's a podcast that I would say it's free to everybody. I'd highly recommend. It's on the Tim Ferriss podcast, and it's his most recent. Well, it was last week. He did Arthur C. Brooks, so then that's why I went and bought the book. But because I love Arthur C. Brooks, but I did not know he did this with Oprah. And so far I'm 2 chapters in or 3. It's really great, but the podcast is amazing. The Tim Ferriss, Arthur C. Brooks podcast. And
That's
it's
why
dealing with this subject.
That's why I actually want to read the book, is because I started listening to another good podcast, which is Oprah's podcast, Super Soul Sundays. And she has a lot of authors and motivational speakers and just different people that she brings on her podcast. So if anyone's interested in that, that's a really good one too.
Yeah, I've kind of just recently discovered the last couple of years podcasts. I subscribe to several services that provide me megatrends and different, and they're expensive, and I get all the stuff to listen to, and I have, like I said, the 1,700 audiobooks, and before that there was this tape of, Nightingale Conan and Tony Robbins, and I would buy, and those were like $80 a pop, and you'd get like 6 cassette tapes and CDs, and so I have probably $20,000 worth of that stuff, and I listened to that. So when I was busy and just didn't really find podcasts, but podcasts are amazing of what's out there, and it's all just free. And it is, again, there's a lot of noise in the world, but I'm a big fan of just being a lifelong learner, and that was one of our earlier things. And maybe we didn't really hit it. It'll come up later in this leadership thing, is to be a self-directed lifelong learner, and that you can take control of your education. And I'm a fan of education. I think it matters less than it did as a entry point to say, well, you have to have an MBA or we won't look to you to hire you. You have to have a college degree. And I think if you're interested in that, you should go get an education. It's amazing. But you can give yourself your own education that I think's better. The education that I've given myself is way better than my master's degree or my MBA or my undergraduate. I have 2 undergraduate degrees. I have a master's and I have an MBA, which is another master's. And this stuff that I've gotten through podcasts and books and training things is way better for me in my view. So, and that's all just there. At most you pay $10 for a book on Audible, and you can go get you can go get a lot of valuable stuff, and the podcasts are free, and there's YouTube stuff. That's another one that I've discovered. It blows my mind when I go find a YouTube thing, but I don't spend a ton of time in there. I'm going to share it. And I am a big Tony Robbins fan, but I'm sorry there's so much Tony Robbins. If you're like, I don't like the guy, but I do think he is an amazing teacher and coach and information. But so there will be a video that I'll be sharing that I just discovered a couple weeks ago. We'll also be watching the Simon Sinek one on leadership, but this Tony Robbins one, he was interviewed by the editor of Inc. magazine. And again, I'll send it out, but I'm like, that's 2 years of leadership education. It's amazing. So YouTube, podcasts, there's a lot of noise too. You can get lost in looking at that's the problem with those is, you can just get lost in watching kittens, play with string, or dogs run into things, and all the other stuff that's on YouTube. And so, all right.
We had one more
Ted,
comment from Maria.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say there's one more.
Thanks, Maria.
It's okay. We're running out of time, so Ted can finish up.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I was just, everything everyone has said, it just kind of hit home with me, because I used to be the kind of person that I didn't keep notes of what needed to be done. I just kind of, oh, I need to do this, this, and this, and this, and this. And then I'd go to bed and I'd be like, oh my God, I didn't do this. And I'd go to sleep and then I'd wake up and I'd be like, shoot, I didn't do this. So then I have started to like keep track of everything that needs to be done during the day, during the week, during the month. And then I cross it off every morning. I'm like, okay, what needs to be done today? So that has helped me a lot. And it seems like it's helped everyone here, in the training. And then you guys are talking about gratitude. And there are millions of people walking around that have depression that you would never believe have depression, They walk around with a big smile on their face and like nothing bugs them. So you never know, like a simple good morning or hello or a simple smile, how that can change a stranger's view of life for that day. That could mean everything to them.
Yeah,
So
thank
that's
you.
what I had to say.
There was a movie, the Mel Brooks movie, What Women Want, and this guy was, I don't remember how it happened, but all of a sudden he could hear people's thoughts, and specifically just women. And it was really powerful to me to see. I think it was Marissa Tomei was the actress, that she was really down, and he could hear her thoughts, and it was just, yeah, you just wouldn't know. It was powerful to me. The other one is, I was literally just thought everybody had all their stuff together all the time and was really happy, and their marriages were great and their life was great. And I mean, I kind of thought my stuff was all together, and it isn't as much as I thought. But I had an opportunity through, being a kind of through my church, where I go to church, and I was kind of got in charge of people. I've done it a few times, and holy cow, there is a lot of pain and suffering. And you look at the neighbors and you think everything's great, and their kids are great, and their marriage is great, and their life is great, and they have nothing going on. You get behind the curtains, pretty much everything's a shit show, and everybody's struggling. And so if we can just do a little kindness to each other and just express a note, like Tara said, if we can smile at somebody, if we can treat people with, practice genshai, and just be kind to ourselves and be kind to other people. I mean, that's leadership. That matters more than all this stuff, is just see the individual. Now, do we have to hold people accountable? Yeah, we do. Because we have accountability. Do we have to fire people sometimes? Do we have to pull people up and say, hey, you got to do this better? Yeah, we do. But accountability is love, and we just need to love more, and we need to be kinder, including to ourselves. And we need to realize, you probably think I'm a mess, my life's a mess, and everybody else has this all figured out. I think we don't. And it's just like when you're a parent, you think parents all know, and then you become a parent and you're like, oh my gosh, they don't know, they didn't know anything. They're just making this up as they go. And we're all just doing that in life. And so I think to be grateful, to be kind, and to lead with love, and I mean that by leadership love, but whether if you're not a leader, but just start with love and just lead out with love, I think is the best practice of all this. So thank you for that. I want to just hit on one other thing I think that Shantae hit, and we'll just end there, is she talked about, I think, well, I don't know, maybe she didn't, but it triggered in me. I just want to hit, I'm a big believer that I believed this back before, and then I think I kind of forgot it. And then I discovered when The Secret movie came out, called The Secret, and then the book came after that, and remembered again. And then I kind of came back to it in the last year or so. But I'll tell you what, and it maybe sounds kind of woo-woo for any of you, that's fine. But I believe that if you want to have different things, that you can manifest it. So I'm just going to read a couple authors that may do that for you. That's about the law of attraction and how to manifest the abundance you want in your life, whether it's health, whether it's love, whether it's money, whether it's success, whether it's whatever it is, that you can attract that to yourself and you can manifest that. And I absolutely, absolutely believe that the law of attraction is real and that there is those forces that actually exist and we can draw that to us. So certainly I'm a big fan of the Rhonda Byrne stuff. It's very pop culture, kind of almost a little, well, I wouldn't say it's silly, but it's a little lighter, but it's really good stuff and I wouldn't let that get in the way. And there's 5 books and I love them all. I start with The Secret. I'm sure that movie it's on YouTube for free. I think you can get that, but another one is James Allen, not so much an abundance person, but has a free PDF you can go find on the internet, As a Man Thinketh, and really powerful stuff. I've told you Tony Robbins, I think, is a great thing in this law of abundance and law of attraction and how to manifest your destiny. And that's one of his even courses. There's a guide. This is also free. You can get a PDF of this, The Master Key System by Charles Harrell, Harrell. And again, it's how to program the life you want. Wallace Wattles, that's also free on the internet. You can find the book as a PDF. That's one of the things that Rhonda Byrne, that's what she read to then spark in her mind the secret. There's a guy named Ulysses S. Anderson. It's called 3 Magic Words. That one's not free, but I think that's a really powerful thing to tell you what's possible. Robert Collier was a Rhonda Byrne who did The Secret, read his stuff. It's called The Secret of the Ages. I just barely read that for the first time. And again, it talks about universal mind and how there is an absolute abundance in the world, in the universe, and we can tap into that and how it's inside of us. The kingdom of heaven is within you. God and all potential is within you. And it does a great job with that. And then Joe Dispenza has some stuff on, well, anyway, Joe Dispenza, one of my favorite authors. So that's kind of some woo-woo stuff, but I'll tell you what, if I could give you any gift, it would be to consider some of that stuff in your life. Any last comments from anybody on any of that stuff that you want to either say, I hate that stuff, or I love that stuff, or
I love it.
I can only add that at one point in my life, I thought it was woo-woo stuff. The thing that broke my brain on that was what you said was Joe Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. It took it and it took my analytical mind and walked me through it in an analytical process, and it completely widened my horizons to just an insane and significant different level. And I have to say, if there's any one thing that has changed my life in the last handful of years, it would be having read Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. It has been a game changer because it's opened up new roads that previously had been completely unknown and unaware to me. And it's heavy and it's weighty, but at the same time, I cannot say anything else has been more impactful to my life in the last handful of years than stretching my mind on that. So.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a little woo-woo, but so is yeast.
Yeah.
So is, it's like, what? I mean, it is these small things that really change everything. And I really do believe that if you want to change your life or improve your life or be the most you can be, it isn't a big complicated thing that says, I got to go. It's this big, it is really a simple process. And because of its simpleness, people refute it and ignore it and miss it. And I do think it's going to come down to these simple, which they're easy to understand, kind of hard to execute. But Joe Dispenza is another thing there's some amazing YouTube videos where people interview him and you get the gist of it. You take that stuff for what it's worth. You can believe me, or like it or not like it, and not everybody, we're all different, we're all wired the same, and some people like spicy food and some people like bland food, and so we are all different, and I'm giving you this through my lenses, and so realize that. But it's done with sincerity, that I'm not trying to convert anybody to anything, or I think these are really powerful things, and I do believe that there is abundance. There is absolute abundance in the world. There's plenty. It doesn't matter how many competitors we have. It doesn't matter what our customers do or what's going on in the economy. There is so much abundance that we can go get as a company and as a group. And there is so much prosperity awaiting us. And we just need to get out of our own way and put some simple things into practice and bring it to us, and we can and will. So thank you, all of you. We will continue this next week. I may put out the Tony Robbins video this week to watch, and I may wait a week, but it's a 40-minute video, so that'll be a little longer homework, but I promise it's worth watching, and I take notes for it too and if you're impatient, you can go Google Tony Robbins Inc. magazine and you can watch the 40-minute video on it. It's just on YouTube, but we'll be pushing that out. So sorry, went over on time. Thank you, everybody, and thank you. Oh, yeah, Shante, my other famous, to me, the most three influential people I would think are the most big thinkers is Tony Robbins, Joe Dispenza, and Michael Singer. Holy cow. And I went through all this stuff, and I did Untethered Soul first, but then I went back to that and I just finished it a couple days ago for my second listen to that. And I had forgotten, yeah, there is so much about managing your state, managing your life, and just letting stuff go. And maybe there feels like there's some woo-woo in there. I mean, he talks about yoga and chi and chakras, but it's I just think it's really powerful. So thank you for that. The Untethered Soul is in my top 5 list of all books all time, probably top 2 or 3. So it's a fantastic book. So thank you. There's some good stuff people have there. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See you later.
Bye. Happy
Thank you.
Friday.
Bye. Happy Friday.